Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. On the hazardous weather graphic, we've got for tonight and the next day or so, starting this evening here for Bristol Bay, there's a winter weather advisory out there for that area starting this evening, continuing through at least midday tomorrow. Looking for anywhere from 5 to 7 inches of new snow through here with the heavier amounts, of course, the higher elevations in the upslope zones there. And gusty winds, 40 to 45 miles an hour in gusts. That'll reduce visibilities to a half mile or less at times. Again, later on tonight, or this evening, and then continuing at least through midday tomorrow. And then things ought to improve beyond that. Otherwise, there's a winter weather advisory also in effect here for the south central, not quite the southern southeast coast, but the areas just to the north there for anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of snow that could fall during the night. Actually, it's currently in effect, and it will stay in effect until sometime tomorrow morning. And again, snowfall amounts anywhere from 2 to 5 inches expected there. And looking at satellite imagery, you can see the area cloudiness here that's bringing the moisture into the southern panhandle today and tonight, and will be continuing into tomorrow there, and eventually will be spreading northward. But for today, not a bad day up over the northern southeast coast with some sunshine. All the moisture streaming eastward here, staying to the south for the most part through the afternoon. Some good breaks here over the Gulf of Alaska on up to Yakutat, and mostly clear skies, Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, up across Cook Inlet, the Sitna Valley areas, and back up to the northwest there. Pick up some clouds around the Alaska Range, 40-mile country there, on up to the north, and then more clouds here with in advance of the front. That's roughly the back edge right through here, well past the Pribilofs, starting to approach the southwest coast now. Pretty good gusty winds in advance of that, hitting close to 60 miles an hour at Cape Newenham. Otherwise, 25 to 35. Some are seeing gusts 40 miles per hour ahead of that frontal zone. Then the break behind it with considerably lighter winds, drier conditions, and some sunshine breaking out here down across the eastern Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty narrow down in this area. And then the colder air coming in, sweeping in from the west and southwest. So rain showers changing to snow showers at Unalaska this afternoon, with a mixture of rain and snow out to the Adak-Atka area, and then even colder temperatures farther to the west. Snowfall levels down to sea level for Shemya and Attu in those areas. Got moisture and snow streaming northward as well here out on the north side of the low center, kind of coming back to the north-northwest there, with fairly kind of scattered amounts here over the southwest interior. Pretty light and intermittent, and not really all that far to the north or to the northeast. On the chart, roughly the frontal position right through here this afternoon, mid to late afternoon on Sunday, with snow mostly falling along Kodiak Island during the day today, but could be areas of mixed rain and snow in the pink shaded areas here. There was rain showers over the Alaska Peninsula and up to the Pribilofs, reporting rain today, but the colder air sweeping in just to the west there of St. Paul, coming down into the eastern Aleutians, and so the rain changed over to snow this afternoon. And as I mentioned, snow showers, although they become quite light out there over the western Aleutians. Good clearing here over the southeast interior of the state, right up into the central interior, and they pick up some clouds there along the White Mountains northward, areas of clouds along the possibly over the Brooks Range. Not too bad actually up there along the Arctic coast. Some areas of blowing snow, reducing visibilities down to about 3 miles at times. Other areas like Kaktovik had 5 miles in haze, but other than that, ceilings pretty high up in that area, with again the areas of light snow here into the southwest interior, mostly on the upslope areas of the Kuskokwim Mountains, and then back to the west, kind of hit and miss there, with nothing really reaching the St. Lawrence Island area other than clouds. And then the pretty good winds gusting 30 to 45 miles an hour here, coming into the western, or into the central Aleutians, diminishing out to the west. Over the southeast coast, weak low pressure area over Canada, and the trough extending southwestward from that, bringing the mixed precipitation into the area this afternoon. Bulk of the moisture still down to the south there and back to the west, and some warm frontal moisture will be pushing eastward. We'll see for tonight. That system drives eastward Pretty good clip there, so that'll be bringing the snow and then to rain along the coast here over the southern panhandle. Look for continued breezy conditions up over the North Link Canal, kind of gusty on the winds there, and the channeled areas of the North Gulf Coast here, especially toward the Yakutat area, and then less gradient as you come west there into Prince William Sound, so no problem wind-wise there. Just look for an increase in the clouds here as the return flow, a little more easterly than southeasterly. Like I thought yesterday, it would have put a little more moisture up. It's holding on to more of an easterly wind direction there, so it'll be slow going as far as any moisture creeping northward along the Kenai Peninsula or even the western Alaska Range there. Rain or snow, and again, the snow for the Bristol Bay area with the winter weather advisory out, as well as the south central panhandle areas. Look for snow and the winds to gradually increase, probably some drifting of the snow around St. Lawrence Island later on, maybe along the southwest coast, on down again into Bristol Bay. 5 to 7 inches expected by tomorrow afternoon through that area. And then back into the gusty winds here to the west and on the southwest quadrant of the system. Could see gusts of 40, 45 miles an hour. That'll be sweeping right into the eastern Aleutians with periods of snow or numerous snow showers, and considerably better back to the west, cutting off with the snow shower activity around or east of Adak, and then looking really good back out to the west with lighter winds and some clearing. Also up here over the interior, pretty gusty winds. Delta Junction seeing gusts 40, 45 miles an hour today. Clear skies though, and that'll continue to affect the area tonight with winds kicking up in that 35 to 45 mile per hour range in areas here, especially the higher elevations of the interior. And for tomorrow, those winds begin to back off a little bit, but they won't end completely, especially along the river valley there from Tanana over to Delta. But south of the mountains, light winds with clouds trying to push northward, but it's slow going. Front hanging up along the coast, just a narrow band of precipitation associated with it. Right along the coast there, the Kenai Peninsula, down into Kodiak, rain and snow showers. And now enough possible warming. Look for areas of rain and snow here over the Bristol Bay area in the afternoon, and colder air, of course, out over the Bering Sea, so it'll be snow mostly as that low slips up just east of the Pribilofs. Northwest winds bringing the snowfall levels again down to sea level, so precipitation in the form of snow from St. Paul again on down to the eastern Aleutians. Winds beginning to diminish there as well, and this trough here keeps some snow shower chances in over the western Aleutians. Mostly clear and a little breezy again all the way up to the Arctic coast. You may see a few clouds. And then for the next day, that front finally weakens, pushes inland, but another trough keeps it unsettled across the panhandle with snow in the north. Rain and snow to rain in the south there, and unsettled also along the North Gulf Coast. Dry up over the interior. Another system, chance of rain and snow into the southwest coast here, and scattered hit and miss snow showers out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And for lows tonight, anywhere from 15 or 10 to 20 below up over the northeast interior to a little above zero through the central interior, and then into the 20s to near 30 by the time you get down to the southwest coast. Lower 30s, lower to mid 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, near 30 for the western Aleutians, panhandle anywhere from the upper teens to the lower 30s. And then for the highs tomorrow, mid 40s down south to near freezing there at Skagway for the panhandle. Mid to upper 30s south central Alaska, near 30 for the Tanana Valley, and either side of zero there for the eastern Arctic coast, upper 20s here over the northern Bering Sea. And then the lows the next morning, looking in the mid 30s there for the Alaska Peninsula, about the same for the panhandle, and teens and 20s here for south central Alaska. Staying below zero, Tanana Valley northward to the Arctic coast, and then the highs for Tuesday afternoon, shaping up like this, upper 30s to maybe lower 40s for south central Alaska into the Susitna Valley. Definitely lower 40s here for the North Gulf Coast, mid 40s Kodiak Island, and upper 30s to lower to mid 40s for the southeast coast. And it looks like about 0 to 5 above for the highs on the Arctic coast up there. Otherwise, mid to upper 30s for the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, and the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather graphics. Area of IFR most extensive out here over the northern Bering Sea from St. Lawrence Island southward and then eastward here across Nunivak Island and northern Bristol Bay to Kodiak, and some of that creeping up toward Kachemak Bay. Marginal VFR slowly increasing along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range throughout the day tomorrow and back into possibly western Prince William Sound. Otherwise, good VFR up over the interior until you reach the central and eastern Arctic coast, and marginal VFR will be on the increase over the southern panhandle. And that will rapidly deteriorate, as you can see here for the forecast for Friday afternoon. We've got IFR extending from Dixon Entrance now, spreading northward across the south. This might be a little fast here up to the north. Probably marginal VFR possible in the afternoon for, say, Chilkoot and White Pass. Otherwise, deteriorating conditions along the Gulf of Alaska to possibly the coastline there. And for the Tuesday morning outlook, this area of IFR here advances eastward a little bit there. Inland areas along the coast of the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta, St. Lawrence Island, staying VFR from the Bering Strait across much of the central and northern interior, the exception being the central and eastern Arctic coast. And the eastern areas of the Panhandle look to be IFR. And for Tuesday afternoon, that pattern holds. Looks like the lowest conditions will be over toward the border there for the Panhandle. Otherwise, marginal VFR to areas of VFR over southern Prince of Wales Island and in toward Dixon Entrance. And then we've got IFR now along the coast and inland here into the Coast Range and the Wrangell Mountains there, Prince William Sound, east side of the Kenai Peninsula. Pretty good chance of IFR conditions there, but in the lee side of the peninsula and the Chugach, you can see VFR for Cook Inlet up into the Matanuska Valleys. The Sitna Valley, though, looks marginal. IFR, Western Alaska Range, Kobuk, Auckland Mountains, and the Yukon Delta coast on into the northern Bering. Otherwise, the Aleutians pretty marginal, as well as just about all of the Bering Sea. Stays VFR up here for the Arctic coast and much of the central and northern interior. For passes tomorrow, good conditions for Anatuvik and Anigan. Good VFR for both those passes there in the Brooks Range. Lake Clark and Merrill. VFR possible increasing, sailings dropping low enough to possibly reach marginal VFR criteria here for both eastern entrances, but I think rainy up to the north. They'll be too far north. You'll see an increase in the clouds, but it should stay VFR through the entire day. Windy definitely VFR, and Isabel and Mentasta both remaining in the VFR category. Tanita, same forecast. Portage, probably see occasionally marginal VFR on the eastern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR to start with, gradually becoming marginal throughout the afternoon, and probably any IFR will hold off until tomorrow night. And for the freezing levels here at the surface, here across the central part of the Panhandle from southeast to northwest, right along the North Gulf coastline, northern Bristol Bay, now south of St. Matthew Island, but staying north of the Pribilofs, and 2,000 feet here, just edging its way up toward Dixon Entrance. And for icing, areas of considerable moderate, possibly here over the southern southeast coast there, bulk of that will stay to the south, and then icing across the Gulf of Alaska into Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, just grazing the North Gulf Coast with some light, moderate rime icing. And same thing here with the southwest interior. Icing chances highest here for the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians, back up toward the Pribilofs to just about at St. Lawrence Island, icing free everywhere else. And the jet stream here showing upper high pressure up over the western north slope, the ridge through there. Northerly flow now a little bit farther to the east here, and over toward across Mackenzie River Delta. And then we've got this southwesterly jet here punching into the Gulf of Alaska at about 130 knots with the ridge axis shifting eastward across the Panhandle throughout the day. Trough approaching western Bristol Bay, and just a large trough farther out to the west. 9,000-foot wind flow showing low pressure just southwest of Nunivak Island. Another one up over the Russian Far East. West-northwesterlies, 20 to 30, maybe 35 knots here across the southern Bering Sea, and 25 for the Panhandle, 3,000 feet. Same pattern, one low in the Gulf, another one out here southwest of Nunivak Island, and 30 to 40 knot winds sweeping around the western and southern perimeter of that. Turbulence, areas of moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, Aleutians, areas of the interior, and across and along the southeast coast.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside of you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get 1 hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, you know, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking, how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term. But I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis showing still a continued regression of the sea ice, or retreat a little bit there, especially here in Nunivak Island up to now south and west of the St. Lawrence Island area. Kind of a decrease in concentrations there due to the gusty winds. They're becoming a little more east-southeasterly, so the continued retreat won't be all that great, but there definitely won't be an advance in the ice for the next few days. On to the marine forecasts here. We've got southwesterlies at 25 knots for the south coast tomorrow with 9-foot seas, and then southeast 25 here for small craft advisories turn easterly at gale force here for the north coast. With seas up to 12 feet, and Lynn Canal, cold outflow winds, 35-knot gales with gusts to 50 knots tomorrow. Seas 7 feet, 30-knot northerlies there for Stevens Passage, and southeast 25 for Clarence Strait. Outlook for Tuesday, less wind over those inside water areas with southerlies at 20 knots for Clarence Strait into Stevens Passage, and of course southerly winds, warmer temperatures all the way up in the northern Lynn Canal with 4-foot seas. Westerlies at 25 knots here on the south coast, and picking up to about 30 knots there for the north coast, with the gales still there on the extreme north coast there in that Yakutat zone, southwest 35, with 16-foot seas come down to about 13 feet on the south coast. Cook Inlet, pretty windy day coming up tomorrow with north of the Forelands, northeast 30 knots, and we got some good gales south of the Forelands, southern Cook Inlet, north 40, northeast 35, minimum gales for Kachemak Bay, and just shy of a storm warning here for the Barren Islands, east 45 knots, 17-foot seas, and full gales here all along the North Gulf Coast from the east and northeast with seas 15 to 16 feet. Prince William Sound, northeast 25, but only looking for those seas to build to 3 feet. And out for Tuesday, much lighter winds here for Prince William Sound, and westerly or variable to west at 10 knots, seas down to 2 feet, and 20-knot westerly winds here. Definitely lighter winds coming up from the North Gulf Coast on Tuesday with seas 8 to 11 feet, 20 knots for the Barren Islands, and pretty light winds now all through Cook Inlet down to Kachemak Bay. Light westerlies at 10 with seas 2 to 3 feet. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, south at 15, but small craft advisories here for the Alaska Peninsula due to southwest winds at 30 knots, seas 13 to 14 feet. Those turn westerly at 30 knots here, Sitkinak, and then up the east side of Kodiak, northeasterlies for Shelikof Strait with seas at 11 feet. And the outlook for Tuesday, westerlies 25 to 30 knots across the peninsula, and then southwest 25, 11-foot seas for Bristol Bay. Southwesterlies 25 knots, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, and up those eastern marine zones on Kodiak, and southwest 20 for Shelikof Strait. For the Aleutians, much lighter winds, or light winds, continue out in the western areas there with west at 15, picking up to 25 knots from Kiska over toward Adak, and then 30 knots there mostly for Atka from Adak, and westerly winds 30 to 35 knots. Looks like the gale force winds will be on the north side, or those Bering Sea marine zones there, and 30 knots out of the west to the south. And then for Tuesday, coming down on the wind, still pretty brisk there for Unalaska Island, 25 to 30 knots, 15 to 20 out to the west, just 10 to 15 for Adak and Atka, and a pretty light wind pattern extending all the way out to Shimi and Attu with 5-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, southeast winds here turn east to 20 north of Nunivak Island tomorrow, and then that pattern extends all the way up to the Bering Strait with easterlies at 20. Northerlies 25 knots here. Again, that cold air coming down on those northerly winds will flow right into the Pribilof Islands with seas building to 13 feet. Outlook for Tuesday, north to west winds here on the southwest coast, 25 to 30 knots, and westerlies at 30 for the Pribilofs, 25 for St. Matthew Island, and light easterly winds here in Norton Sound out across St. Lawrence Island, just 15 knots. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, 25 to 30 knot easterlies there actually extend to the central and west side. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson down to 15 knots and then back up to 25 down to the Bering Strait from actually south of Cape Thompson. And then for the next day on Tuesday, lighter winds 10 to 15 knots here from Wales all the way up to the west side of the coast, and then easterlies at 20 knots for the central coast over to Demarcation Point. And looking at tonight's forecast again, pretty windy here through the central interior, especially around Delta Junction. Could see winds gusts 40, 45 miles an hour. And of course, the higher elevations here will be pretty breezy, but generally, well, it will be dry and mostly clear. And those gusty winds into the northern panhandle there and the channeled areas of the eastern North Gulf Coast. We've got wind weather advisory for the southern panhandle tonight for 3 to 5 inches of snow. Coming into the area there with this mass of moisture in the warm front, or ahead of the warm front. Wind weather advisory out for Bristol Bay could see 5 to 7 inches of snow there tonight into about midday tomorrow, with increasing snow here along the southwest coast. Some of that could start blowing and drifting around there from the Yukon Delta, maybe to St. Lawrence Island. And then tomorrow that system kind of weakens. The frontal boundary washes out right through here with just some leftover moisture. And wind weather advisory ends. Not much change up over the interior, maybe a little less wind, but it'll still stay breezy over toward Delta Junction and showery out to the west, but not too bad. And that front hangs up right along the panhandle there for rain in the south along Prince of Wales Island to chance of snow edging its way northward there, but possibly not even getting up to as far as Haines. And then the next day, a better chance of precipitation for the panhandle. Let's look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.